Right. Still, we are not able to share the screen. Where's our host? If the host is available, okay, right. Thank you. Right. Okay, now we can proceed. So we have about 6 students now. Let's continue. It's about aims, goals, and objective. So aims, goals, and objectives are very important in education. In different contexts, these concepts, especially the two concepts, aims and goals, are used interchangeably. That means in some countries, they believe that the goals are broader, whereas aims are a little narrow than that. But in some other contexts, they say aims are broad and goals are a little narrower than aims. So these two are interchangeably used. In the Sri Lankan context, we believe goals are broad, very broad. Aims are derived from goals and objectives are derived from aims. So the order, we believe in Sri Lanka, in the intensity order. In size, in broadness, its goals are big, aims are average, and objectives are the specific ones, smallest one, right? In the education, we should have goals. So usually we have national goals. Then we have aims in education. So educational aims should go in a par with the national goals. And based on these educational aims, we build our objectives. So objectives are also divided into two as general objectives and specific objectives. So general objectives may apply to a whole unit of some subject, and specific objectives are usually for the lesson. So in any endeavor, being able to distinguish between your goals, aims, and objectives is crucial to your success. What's the difference between the three? In simple terms, a goal is a long term. So it's something you work towards, right? So a goal takes a long time to achieve. Usually it's a complete lesson process or a complete course of action, a complete course of education. We need a complete course of education to achieve a goal, accomplish a goal. But we believe that the aim can be achieved a little like comparatively shorter time. Okay, that's about aims, goals and aims. Your goals may thus be some way off in the future and thus take time to achieve, even years in some cases. So it takes several years. Usually, a goal takes several years to achieve. An aim is a single statement of your purpose. Meanwhile, your aim says why you are doing the things you are doing right now. And finally, your objectives are a series of tasks that you complete to achieve your aim. So if you start achieving your objectives one by one, that means you are going towards the achievement of your aim. So let's dive into each aspect, right? So let's first look at what goals are. Setting goals in life is essential. I'm going to share this document with you, right? I will send this document, then Mr. Rizad will share it with you. Setting goals in life is essential. Otherwise, you aimlessly drift around, hoping for the best to happen, right? So goal, in other words, is a destination. Where are we going? So you may have your life goals. Now, wanting to become a doctor, wanting to become an engineer, wanting to become a teacher, And once you are a teacher, now you want to go to the second and next grade of teachers, your profession, or you want to become a principal, a director, right? So all these can be goals. If you don't have a goal, you just drift around, hoping for the best to happen. You can avoid that by using the SMART framework to help you think about and craft highly effective, achievable goals in a way that ensures you will recognize the moment you have achieved whatever goals you have set, right? So once you have achieved the goal, you should understand that I have achieved my goal. In order to understand that, you need to have a kind of SMART framework. SMART is an acronym. It stands for 5 meanings based on SMART, right? Let's look at them towards the end. But we should be able to see that we have been able to achieve our goal. For example, if your goal is to buy a luxurious car, right? Once you have bought it, you should understand, yes, I have achieved my goal, right? Then you can go for a next level of a goal, or you can work starting, like you can work for another type of goal. You can start to work for another goal. If you have spent any time on this website, that's a different one. Right, we don't need this part, so let me remove it. Right, so our writer is giving personal examples, right? Let's look at this personal example. So some years ago, I had a life goal to work for a blue chip company. It took me several years and a lot of hard work to achieve that goal. I eventually joined Unilever, it's name, the consumer goods giant, in 1998, and spent 23 glorious years working in the IT department. So that's about our writer's personal achievement. That's a goal. I reached that goal by never taking my eyes off the ultimate prize. I was determined to succeed, working and studying for a postgraduate Master of Business Administration, building my professional network and IT knowledge until the day came when I achieved my goal or my vision, right? So all companies, all institutions have their vision, ultimate vision. So that's the goal, what we call as goal, the broadest goal, right? But still we may have several other goals, like in education, you have now, at the moment, we have 9 national goals. And with the revision of syllabus or the introduction of new curriculum, there will be only 6 goals. So the Sri Lankan government, the education ministry, was supposed to introduce the new curriculum reforms this year. I don't know what has happened to it. I don't know whether they, once they start the first term, whether they will go for the reforms. There's no news about it, but with the reforms, we have only 6 national goals now. Right, then let's look at aims. An aim is a single statement. So again, it's a single statement of purpose and a stepping stone towards your overall goal. Right, so by achieving one by one, a few goals, few aims, there are not many aims, there can be few aims, stepping stone towards your overall goal, right? So they are the stepping stones, achieving one by one, or if you can try to achieve all together at once, but finally you will have reached your goal. For instance, as part of my goal, so he's giving personal examples again. As part of my goal to work for a blue chip company, I had the aim to complete an MBA. Without a higher qualification, I believed that I wouldn't clear the first hurdle of being offered an interview. This aim became my focus for 3 years. culminating in my graduation ceremony and that all important certificate. And if you are wondering, my MBA was indeed the decisive factor in getting an interview at Unilever's corporate headquarters. So we can identify different levels of aims here, right? The first aim to complete an MBA, right? Okay, so this became my focus for 3 years. Right? So with the graduation, that is done, right? So with the certificate, that is done, right? So then what happens? The next aim is getting an interview. So my MBA was indeed the decisive factor in getting an interview at Unilever's corporate headquarters. So that's another aim. It is achieved. Then the next aim will be getting the job. Of course, you may be simultaneously working on more than one aim, which is just fine. But don't lose sight of your overall goal. Ask yourself whether your aims are driving you closer to that goal. If the aims aren't still relevant, stop to reassess and recalibrate your aims to help get back on track. Now that you have got a better understanding of aims, what about objectives? How do they work? So the most important part here, right, are objectives. So let's look at objectives. Your objectives describe a series of tasks and activities that, if completed, enable you to achieve an aim. Objectives not only map directly onto an aim, but also have a start and end date. In my case, my objectives were studying in the evenings and completing the dozens of time-based assignments for my MBA. Each assignment I completed moved me one step closer to my aim. So then completing assignments is an objective, right? So there can be one objective for one assignment. Another objective can be passing through the semester examination. So once all these objectives are achieved, then it leads to a goal. So that, aim, right? So once these were achieved, objectives were achieved, right? The aim he or she had, that is achieving the MBA, was done. So that's the basic difference or a basic definition, basic understanding for goals, aims, and objectives. Goals, aims, and objectives. See, goals are broad, very broad. Aim is in the second level, right? And finally, we have objectives. We divide into two as general objectives and specific objectives. So in the education, general objectives are broader than specific objectives. Specific objective is what you would like to do within 1 year or in one period. And once several of these things are added together, like for a month or for a term, then you may have a general objective, and it leads to aims. Several aims lead to goals, right? So that's the basic concept about it. And let me move to something else, some other document to talk further about goals, aims, and objectives. Right. So this time I would like to share my screen because there's a video you would like to see. This video also speaks about goals, aims, and objectives. So let me start sharing screen. First, share sound. Of course, this is not the, oh God, this is not the screen I want to share. And unfortunately, there's like internet connection also. Anyway, I believe you can see my screen. First, I will share the video and then just tell me whether you can see it clearly and hear it clearly. Okay, let's look at this video. It will take some time to open because this video player takes a little time to open. So just wait a minute until it opens. And then let me know whether you can clearly hear and see it. Right, it's still opening.
Hi, hello guys. Today's our lecture is difference between goals, aims and objectives. There is differences. What are their major differences?
Can you hear it?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. And you see the screen also? Yes. There's heavy rain here, so there can be disturbances to the internet quality also, but so please bear with us, right? All right, let's see it.
Between goals and aims and objectives. Aims are basically at
right. So you will see, you will hear a different accent, so don't focus a lot on the accent. Now you can see here they have changed the two concepts: aims, goals, and objectives. Right. So they believe aims are in national level, goals are in institutional level, and objectives are in instructional level. Right. Objectives have to stem from the aim, and the goals are breakdowns of objectives. Right. So it should be like the other way around. Right. Goals are broken into objectives, broken down into objectives. Right. So as I told you earlier, these two are interchangeably used. Now, in our context, goals are national level and aims can be institutional level. Right. Anyway, let's listen to him and see what he has to say us.
the national level. A national designer sets the aims, give the concept of aims, and goals are institutional level. Institution sets and designs the goals, and objectives are your instructional level. Let's suppose is subject content to the objectives, and those objectives are achieved with limited sources and with limited passage of the time. Objectives, your objectives are streamed from aims. Objectives are streamed from aims. Yes. And goals are broken down from the objectives. Goals are broken down from the objectives. This is, and aims are broad. Aims are at the broader level than the objectives, than goals. As I have said, you nation at the national level. These are at the national level, and objects are mental or social institution. But further objectives are divided. The goal is to be good human, to be educated. But this is my goal. For this I set objectives. I set specific objectives, or I choose the specific direction. So that is objectives. Means if you set your goal, For that, you must have the certain kind of the objectives which make you possible to meet your goals. And ends are something, those are at the high, and those are generalized, you can say. Of M's, there's a difference between M's and objectives. M's are ultimate, which individual or group want to be achieved. These are achieved through the individuals and groups. These are achieved by the individuals and groups. There are some people in the form of group. They have some aims to be achieved, or they have decided some work to be done. So this is their aim. Individual has also aim to a specific work to be done, but objectives are at individual. Objectives are always for the individuals to be completed. Objectives are set for the individual, for the development, or for the welfare of the human, for the individual. And the aims are long-term outcomes. Aims are for the long-term outcomes, but their objectives are for the short-term outcome. These are setted, these are designed, these are placed targeted for the short term, that can be achieved for the short term. If you are studying the subject of the guidance and counseling or psychology, education psychology, but some objectives are given to be achieved for this specific time, for the short term. Not all the life you cannot study to the education theories of the education psychology or another subjects. Means these are for the short term. Those objectives are needed to be achieved. Aims are general direction. These are general. There is a generalization in aims and in general direction, but the objectives have the specific direction. These are the objectives. These are needed to be achieved within months or after within few months. General direction, but there is a purpose. There is a purposeful. Aims are purposeful, but in objectives there is assessment. There is an element of the assessment. In objectives, either there's a formative assessment during class, or there's a summative assessment at the end of the course or study program. These are based on achievements. There is an assessment, and they can be measured. Aims are measurable. Aims cannot be measured. Aims cannot be measured, and objectives can be measured. I have achieved some objectives. I measure my objectives with a teacher measure the objectives with using the different tools and techniques. Either there's a summative or formative assessment. Uses several techniques and methods for the assessing a student's learning outcomes. Means that is measurable with the form of grades, performances, projects, assignments, scores. That is, aims are broad. These are broader. These are high, and objectives are, there's action in objectives: exercise, action, practice. There's an element of the action, practice, and exercise in the objectives. And beyond your aims are beyond the school, all around. Means you for the achieving your aims, it is not needed to follow the classroom, to be strict, to always be too strict in the classroom, to follow the teaching methods. This is not enough. This is something very tiny. This is
further elaborate on this a little, right? So we can say that aims, they become the ultimate goals, right? And it can be a task of a group or an individual. So often it is a task of a group, and in the objective type it is individual, right? Always a teacher in the classroom is trying to achieve the lesson objective. Right? And to achieve an aim, we need a long time, like an year, 2 years, or a whole course of education. Right? Objectives are short term. You can achieve them in 40 minutes, 30 minutes, or a day or two, like 80 minutes maximum, like that. Right? General direction and specific direction, then there's a purpose. Here the objectives are focused on achievement, time bound, cannot be measured. Aims cannot be measured. Aims cannot be measured because they are broad, right? When it is too big, it's difficult to measure, right? So they cannot be measured because they are too broad. And objectives can be measured because they are small, specific, small scale things, right? So objectives
So
need.
can you sorry, sir. Can you explain it with like with more details? An example can be measured and cannot be measured.
Okay, right. Now take this for example. Let's say we have lesson objectives, like students are able to use the present simple tense, and they can use present simple tense to express all functions of it. Then you say the students are able to use adjectives properly, adjectives to describe nouns. Students can use conjunctions to connect to sentences. So like that, they are specific objectives, what we try to achieve within lessons, right? And the aim can be, let's say, the students develop their reading skill. The students develop their reading skill. The students develop their speaking skill, right? Now, this is very difficult to measure because speaking skill is very broad and the reading skill is very broad. For example, reading, when you say reading skill, it can include identifying the letter, the particular character with its sound, right? And putting several characters together and pronouncing it as a word, and understanding the meaning of that word, the comprehension part. Reading a small text and understanding the meaning of it, right? Reading a big text and getting the general idea of it. Then reading a subject-related book and making notes on that. When you study for your degree, you have to read a lot and make notes on them, right? So reading like has a big range like that, a vast range, right? So if you say the speaking skill, it's the same, right? Speaking skill can be making a sound that is recognizable for the others, and you speak out a word, a phrase, sentence, dialogue, a long speech, short speech, long speech, argument, discussions, right? So many things are there, right? So it's very difficult to measure all these things together within a short time, right? So that's why we say cannot be measured, right? So I would rather say difficult to be measured, right? If you want to measure it, right, you have to come to the smaller levels of actions, objectives. So measure whether they can pronounce words well, and still we can measure whether they can pronounce the consonants well, consonant clusters well. Can they pronounce syllables well, simple words? So begin with that. Then can they conduct a small speech on themselves, like self-introduction? Can they give a good self-introduction? Can they describe somebody or something? Right? Can they introduce a friend to another person? Can our students conduct a good speech in the morning assembly? Can they conduct a discussion with the others? Can they greet others? Right? Can they like oppose the ideas of the others politely? So these are the small parts of the speaking ability. And we have to measure these small parts only. Like it's because it's difficult for us to measure those broad things. It takes a lot of time. It needs resources, right? And it's like very difficult for us to set criteria for this, write rubrics for a very big one, like a skill, full skill, right? So that's why we say aims cannot be measured. Objectives can be measured because they are small. Takes place within a short period of time comparatively. Any questions based on that? Any more questions? Any more issues? Further questions arising on the description? The person who asked the question?
Yeah, I'm okay, so I'm clear.
Right. What about the others? No.
Clear,
Right.
sir.
Okay, thank you. And aims go beyond the school all around. That means usually now we were talking about the word outcome, right? Outcome always goes beyond the output. Output can be one thing and outcome is another thing, right? So aims should go beyond the school. It's like this. Now you can say students are able to use adjectives to explain, describe nouns, right? But an aim should be, right, the students use this knowledge outside the school or in their day-to-day world, in their day-to-day activities, in their day-to-day conversations with their family members. Students are able to face an interview. So that is outside the school. The aim is that, right? So uses the speaking skill well to go through an interview. They go beyond it, right? Objectives that can be like completing the task given in the classroom. So that can be the objective, but don't limit your objective to the task or activities, right? The language, because if we are language teachers, the language they learn, the part of language they learn. If you are mathematics teachers, the mathematical concept they grasp in that particular lesson, right? The scientific knowledge they grasp. So that is for our specific objective. And how that knowledge is used in their day-to-day purposes outside the society, that can be the aim. That should be the aim. Right, let's proceed.
Something very not enough, small. For the objectives, there is a limited source. These are immediate actions towards the goals. Next is difference between goals and objectives. The goals are broad than objectives. If you achieve the objectives, then you move towards the goals. Our goals are beckoned on small components, fragments of the objectives. These are intangible, abstract. These are abstract in nature, intangible and abstract in nature goals. Intangible. These are specific and tangible. Your objectives are specific and tangible and measurable. You can measure them. And to run a profitable operation, increase the revenue and the reducing the expenses. And general in nature, goals are general in nature and not time bounded. These are not time bounded. And objectives are time bounded and limited, short or minimized. Okay, guys, this was the today's lecture. Objectives and their differences. For the
Right. Let me quote an example for this also. Right. Difference between goals and objectives. We see that goals now, since that we have discussed a lot about objectives now, by now, let's see what goals are. Goals are broad, intangible, and abstract. For example, you can say, I want to be a good person. So becoming a good person is our goal, right? It's a very broad one because a good person should possess so many different characteristics. There are so many different characteristics, qualities we expect from a good person, right? It's very broad and it's abstract because it's very difficult to define a good person, right? Certain characteristics of a good person, for me, may not be in the list of yours, right? You may have a different list of characteristics, right? Now, for example, now if we have a male adult group of friends, like their values can be different to a set of a set of female adult group. So a good person for the male group will be a playful person who's outgoing and who would like to stay with the friends and go to parties, play games like, I mean, the physical type of sports and games, right? Go on trips, enjoy things. So that can be one thing. The good person, right? He's a good person, helping others, right? Talking nicely, right? But if we put that into a group of female adults, now that can be different. They will surely a good person for them will be a teetotaler, right? Who doesn't smoke or no, who doesn't consume alcohol and then stays at home with the family, always caring for the family. So that type of thing, that can be the good person for them, very religious, right? Going to religious places with the family members. So that can be the description of a good person for that female group, right? So that's because of that it is abstract in a sense and it changes, right? So we can't like put a definite explanation. We can't say that this is the good man, right? But still everyone wants to be a good man according to their set of criteria. So it's very difficult to give a specific list of characteristics and to a certain level, right? There can be different levels of this goodness. So therefore, the goals are very broad, intangible, right, and abstract, right? But objectives can be specific, tangible, measurable. Now, tangible, don't misunderstand the word tangible, right? That means we can see the result. A clear result can be seen. You can measure it. And specific. You can achieve it within a short time, right? Yeah, okay. That's about goals and objectives. So let me stop sharing this one. Right. Any questions regarding that? All right, silence says there's no question. Okay, then let me give you a simple task on this, right? Can you take a piece of paper and write one of your goals? So let's stick to that concept, like goals are very broad. Then comes aims, and after aims we have the specific objectives, the smallest type that you can achieve within a short time, right? So what I want you to do is just write 3 statements. First one is one of your goals in life, right? So then write an aim that you will pass in the process of achieving that goal. You want to come to that goal. To come to that goal, there are a few aims that you should achieve. So write one of the aims, right? And to achieve or accomplish that aim, you should have objectives, small things that you should do, right? So write one of those small things you should do to achieve that aim, come to that aim or reach that aim, right? So you can start from any level, right? You can start from the broadest level, the goal, then a small aim to achieve that goal, and a smaller objective to achieve that aim. Or you can start with the smallest type of achievement you expect, and when you achieve it little by little, several objectives, where do you go, where do you proceed, the aim, right? And after achieving several of such objectives, sorry, such aims, right, what's the broad goal you can achieve, right? Hope the task is clear. I just want to see whether you have grasped the real meaning of goals, aims, and objectives. So take 2-3 minutes, write your answers. If you like, you can type your answers in the chat, send to me, or send to us, or me, any way you like, right? Either it can be a direct message or a message for the whole group. You can write and take a photo and add to the chat. Or in 2-3 minutes, I'll call you, I'll speak to you, so you can switch on your mic and speak. Read your goal, aim, and objective. Right, let's start. Let's restart our discussion in 2-3 minutes. Okay, start. Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have received an answer from Rasin. I think everybody has seen it. Yes, a good goal we can see. Yes, excellent. Becoming a chemistry professor. Yes. So that's a broad one. And to become that on your path, there's a step called completing a degree in chemistry. Yes, very good. Right. And we have another one from Taranga. Oh, Taranga. I don't know. Right. Goal, enhance knowledge in education field. Teacher license, good. Complete B.Ed degree. Yes, very good. Right. So we have the broadest one is enhancing knowledge in education field. That's true because it never ends. Right? That enhancing knowledge in education field, we don't know how many years you need and where's the end. That's a very good example for goal. One aim in that process, right? And in order to get that license, you need a B.Ed degree. Good. Right. And Hasna says, when I was small, I wanted to studied well from grade 1 to different terms like complete school education. Right. Objective is to complete school education. Then aim, enter the College of Education. Right. Step by step, this is like for me, both sound teacher, that's fine, become a teacher. So that's a goal, right? But this both objective and aim look same, right? They are in same size. So both look like aims. So you can now this objective, I think you can make it smaller, right? Complete school education is an aim. So let's say first pass the grade 5 scholarship examination, pass O level with enough qualifications to follow A level stream, then pass A level, right? So those can be the objectives. Of course, there are also some general objectives, right? So we have those objectives. When you achieve those objectives, your aim is already complete. That is complete school education, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
In our school, I mean, in the team, I mean, in teachers' instruction manuals, we are given like competencies and competency levels, and then objectives.
Right.
Then what about that? For a lesson, the aim will be the competency, and the objectives are competency level. Is that so? Then after that, after completing that only, we achieve the national goals.
Right. Yes, I was like my plan was to come to competency and competency levels after this discussion. Now that you have
Okay.
asked the question,
Yeah.
it's like yes, competency is something like a goal, right?
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to achieve a competency within a very short time. To achieve, it is not achieve, actually master. To master a competency, you need several years, many years. So let's put that in the level of a goal, right? But with these competency and competency levels, please understand that there are national goals also, right? Yes, national goals are still broader than the competency and competency levels. Because the competency is very difficult to be achieved within a short time, we break the competency into competency levels. Right. So they are something like our aims. Right. Actually, competency and competency levels are like aims of two different levels. Small aims and broad aims, like, right? Then to achieve a competency or master a competency level, there can be objectives. Because still competency level also to master competency level also you need some time. For example, there are several competency levels that we have in our education system. So one competency level is extract specific information from different types of texts. Extract specific information from different types of texts, which is related to reading skill. So that's a competency level related to reading skill. So to give that practice for our students, the practice of extracting specific information from different types of texts, we can't do that in one period because we have to introduce different types of texts. So they should know what extracting information is, what type of information can be extracted, and the techniques to extract information. Then they should be able to read a poem and extract some information. Read notice and extract the necessary information. Read some food labels, etc. Right? Find other specific information like the price, the date of expiry, ingredients, production name, etc. Right? And read a story, small story, and extract information. So there are so many different small sub skills related to that. So even for achieving that competency level, we can see that we need several hours. So because of that, again, we have to break that competency level also into small objectives. So that's why you see in the education system, competency levels, and again objectives. Okay. Is it clear? Not clear. You have doubts still? Hello, who asked that question? Right. Okay, so whoever asked the question has left.
Yes, sir.
Right.
No, sir. Yeah, okay.
Right. Let's see. Okay. Now let's move to discuss in deep about objectives. Right. So let me see. I wanted to share a document, right? No, all right. There's something more that we can discuss about aims, goals, aims, and objectives. So let's first discuss a little more about it, right? Discuss a little more about aims, goals, and objectives. Then move to discuss further about objectives because that's the most important part for us. Because what we are going to write in our lessons is the objectives. So before that, again, small document about goals, aims, and objectives. Now here we can see it is about aims, goals, and objectives. So they are taking aims first, then goals, then objectives, right? So this is what we are going to look at in this particular presentation, right? It's in the PDF form. If there's anything important for you, you may not make notes on this, right? Because I may not be able to share this with you. So let's see aims, goals, or building objectives important. That is why is it important? Behavior objectives to be avoided. Then we think they are objectives, but they are not really objectives. Let's see. So what's an aim? According to this represents the results aimed at in an educational process. Right? I'm not going to explain them in depth because we have discussed them. Goals are derived from the general goals of teaching English so that is about English, but for any subject, goals are usually derived from the education purposes of the country. Now, usually in our context, goals of education should be determined by the country itself, like the people of the country. But in our country, usually the goals are determined by the politicians. Politicians, in a sense, the government. The ruling party or the government decides the goals. So we can't do anything about that. That's their right. So they decide the type of education that is given to the people, the general public, and they decide the goals. After that, they send those goals to the curriculum developers, curriculum setters, so that the curriculum setters can design the aims of education, right? And this curriculum document is sent to the schools, to the teachers. So then the teachers decide the objectives, lesson objectives. Right, that's how it goes in Sri Lanka, right? So there are 4 types of goals: proficiency goals, cognitive goals, affective goals, and transfer goals. We will be discussing further in deep about the cognitive goals, affective goals, etc. Proficiency goals, right? The person who prepared the slides had included so many color images there, so the words may not be clear, but so proficiency goals means what is achieved upon the completion of the course, right? So there the students are expected to distinguish between formal and informal speech. That is like very specific in information about their particular course, right? But we can take them as examples. Communicate effectively with others, extract the theme of the reading material, summarize what is heard or read in. Right. So then cognitive goals. Cognitive means related to knowledge. Right. So they can be present ideas and information orally and in writing. Write and speak to an audience. Identify the meaning of some words through contextualization. So these are all are related to second language learning. Right. Affective goals means the things that are related to your feelings, attitudes, etc. The way we think. So, for example, things can be respect to their heritage, positive attitude towards learning English as a target language. So those are examples for affective goals. Transfer goals, that is not very necessary for us. There are objectives. We divide objectives into 2 categories as behavioral and instructional, or performance objectives, right? It's very simple. We use action verbs to write our objectives. So if you directly begin with the action verb, your objective, that's a behavioral objective, right? If you begin the objective with the word to, that's an instructional objective, right? Now, for example, let's say the way we think about the ability of the child, the ability acquired by the child, we might say, for example, you may say, writes complex sentences, writes complex sentences. Can we develop further on that? Writes complex sentences using subordinating conjunctions. So that's the objective, and it is behavioral objective because it shows the behavior of the learner's behavior, that is rights, right? And if you think from your side as a teacher and say, this is what I want my students to get, right? You say, to enable the students to write complex sentences, to give the ability of writing complex sentences to the students, to make students able to write complex sentences. So if you word your objective in any manner like that, that is instructional objective. So that's the difference between these two. Right. So cognitive domain, we are going to discuss this in very deep, right? Maybe in the next lesson, right? It has these 6 levels, everybody knows them: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So we expect to write our objectives based on those levels. Right, then affective domain is divided into 5 like this: receiving, responding, valuing, organization, and characterization. So we'll discuss them further. So when we write our objectives, we write objectives in relation to them. Psychomotor domain, actually there are again 6 or 7 levels. This is not what we wanted, right? We will discuss further those 3 domains in detail. So when you write behavioral objectives, you think about students' behavior. Then when you write the objective, we have to give a condition of performance. Then some criteria for this performance, right? So here we have 3 very important words. They are behavior, condition, and criteria, right? So when you write objectives, we say that we have to follow CBB. Sorry, some say it is CCB, some say BCC, right? And some say CBC. Right? So whatever it is, there should be 1 B and 2 Cs. Let's call it CCB, right? So the objective should have some criteria. We need the criteria to measure it, right? And there should be a condition. Condition means up to which level we are going, right? And the behavior. Behavior means the action they can do. They can perform, right? Let's see further examples for this. So why are learning objectives important? Because when you know the objective, you can select appropriate teaching methods, skills, and strategies. Choose needed equipment and suitable materials. Now, for example, if our objective is to extract personal details tell us the condition, or if you say correctly, that gives the condition. Extracts is the action verb, that is behavior, right? From a poem, right? Now, when you say it's a poem, you know the type of material you need. So if we clearly write the objective, then it is easy for us to prepare the lesson. Select an appropriate schedule for program presentation, right? So then how you are going to do it, you can easily decide once you are clear about the objectives, right? So here we have some guidelines for writing a learning objective accurately, right? See, begin each objective with an action verb. That's very important. So begin with an action verb. In our context, we begin with the singular form action verb, right? So it's in the simple present tense and it's singular form, right? So that is like we are focusing on 1 child in the classroom. So if you want them to write a letter, they say writes an informal letter, right? If you want them to write a formal letter, then you say writes a formal letter of inquiry, writes a formal letter of let's say excuse, writes a formal letter of invitation to the correct format. So writes a formal letter of inquiry to the correct format. So that's a condition to the correct format. Rights is the behavior, right? The formal letter, what is that? That can be the criteria, right? Action verb, which depicts definite observable behavior, So we should be able to see this behavior and describes what the learner will be doing. That's the action. Identify, formulate, list, describe, and recall. So those are some examples for these action words. Identify, formulate, list, describe, recall. Those things we can see or hear. State each objective in terms of students' performance rather than teacher performance, right? So that's how it becomes behavioral. If you are focusing on the student's performance, it becomes behavioral. If you are focusing on the teacher's performance, that means it is instructional. State each objective as a learning product. That means outcome or terminal behavior, rather than in terms of learning process, right? So therefore, we don't write the words like practice, right? Because practice happens in the process. Practices to write cursive writing, no. That's the process, right? What is the result? Then you say, right? Writes a page using cursive writing, right? Using proper cursive writing. So that's the product we want to see, writes a page. So we want to see a page of cursive writing from our student, right? State only the outcome or behavior in each objective. So it can be either outcome or the behavior, both are same. Make objectives clear, brief, and unambiguous, right? If the objective is ambiguous, right? If its meaning is not clear, you don't know how to plan your lesson. So start a set of behavioral objectives for a lesson with a phrase such as at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to, right? So just think that this part is there in all objectives, but we don't write it usually. So the objective, we want to see the accomplishment of the objective at the end of the lesson. So because of that, we have this in our mind. At the end of the lesson, my students or the students in my class will be able to do this particular thing. That's what you write really. Do this particular thing. Describe the important conditions under which the learner will be learning and indicate how the learner will be evaluated. So that's why we say they can be measured. They should be able, you have to be measuring the objective, achievement of the objective. These are some things that we should avoid, right? I will present sight words. That's what the teacher is going to do. So we can't write it because it is presenting. Presenting is at the beginning, right? That's not a result. That's not an outcome. I will present sight words. Sight words are like very common words that we usually see. We often see in, on, and, at, and then some common pronouns. Then words like and, right? He, she, it. Very common words that we usually see, always see, they are sight words. Students will read orally the previously taught words, right? So when you say previously taught words, if you have taught for 1 year, and you can see that it's a broad one, right? We don't know which words you expect your students to read because we don't know how many words were taught previously. Right. We have to be very specific. Words related to what? Right. Are they nouns, verbs, adjectives? What are they? I mean, related to? Do they talk about the frequency adverbs, or whether they are adverbs of time, adverbs of place. So we can I mean very like minimize these things, make them very specific. Students will read orally words from a lesson under what condition, right? So we have to give a condition like read how. Students will read orally words from a lesson. So is it like allowed or with correct pronunciation, right? So like that, we have to give a good condition for that. I will teach the present simple days. That's what teachers are going to do. So that's not an objective, right? You can't say teach because you have to explain the way you do it, right? So we have another simple task. Choose a lesson and then write down in structural objectives, right? So forget the word structural. Can you write 1 or 2 objectives for a particular lesson, right? So if you like, you can select any lesson you know. Yes, you select a lesson you like, right? It's we don't need any kind of textbooks or textbook lessons now. Just think about a lesson you are going to teach, and can you write 2-3 objectives for that lesson, right? Now keeping the things that we learned in this document in your mind, try to show that you can measure it at the end, and this is the specific ability the students will have at the end of the lesson, the specific skill or the sub skill, the specific type of knowledge they will have at the end of the lesson, right? Okay, I give you time for this also, for a change, and to see whether we can now understand what an objective is. So take 2-3 minutes and write 2-3 objectives. You can add them to the chat box as you did earlier, right? Right, take 2-3 minutes and write objectives for any lesson you like and present it to the class. Then let's discuss them. Right, please start. I will resume discussion in 2-3 minutes. What's wrong this time? I don't see any. Right. Thank you. Okay. All right, very good. Yes, so here we have good objectives from Razina. Converting gram to kilogram, calculating volume of substance, using equation finding the density of a given substance. Yes, finding the density of a given substance using equation. Okay, good. Yes. Who else would like to give us examples? Yes, so one more we have. I will call you Lienagi because I don't know whether you are Taranga or Taranga. Recount writing. Right, Nari?
Taranga, sir.
Sorry, okay, Taranga. Can use fun punctuation marks. Right, so I am not like I don't want to change the way you write these things, the wording of it, because I understand that in different institutions, the wording can be different. Like now, we can see that Rasina's beginning with ing form. Right now, here you are writing with can, right? So, but in government context, in our schools, we begin with the third person singular action verb, right? So anyway, if the idea is correct, that's all what we want. Now, for this type of things, nowadays, people call them can-do statements. Yes, can use fun punctuation marks, right? Can write a recount with the title and interesting vocabulary. That is very good, right? Can use past tense verbs sometimes. When you say sometimes, it can be a little vague, right? If you can mention the exact time, that's where we have that condition and criteria very clearly, right? Second one is very good, and the fun punctuation marks, like they are also, if you can name one or two, then that will become again very specific. Now in Rasina's case, calculating volume of a substance, if we can mention a condition like using equation, finding the density of a, yes. If you can name a kind of equation, then that becomes very specific, right? If you can give a situation like that for the first one, converting gram to kilogram, right? Or how it is converted, right? We can make them further more specific. Right, anyway, thank you. And your attempts are good. They are correct. I was giving some comments on it for improvement. These are good ones. Yes. Density is mass and volume. Yes. Right. No more answers. Anybody who's not able to, is there anybody who would like to read the objectives? All right. Right. So let me stop this one and move to the next part of our lesson. Right. I wanted to discuss writing objectives further. Of course, I'm going to discuss more about writing objectives, especially with the special focus for the 3 domains, levels of 3 domains. But before that, now that you have already asked the question about competency and competency levels, I would like to discuss a little about competency and competency levels first. So, let me share our university document and discuss about competency and competency levels, because I found a very clear description of competency and competency levels in this document given by our university. So let's go for that. Let me share that one, that document, and discuss about competency and competency levels. Right, where are we? Share, right. Right. You can see what our document says about education and goals. Apax Campus understands both in similar terms, general objectives and specific objectives. So educational goals are conditions which are expected to be acquired or reached as an ideal. These are broad, so we know these characteristics. It is a long-term target. We discussed everything. Educational goals are decided by the society, and they have built during a long period of time. Sometimes they are concluded by policymakers or course organizers, right? So usually aims are, I mean, in Sri Lankan context, the aims are designed by the policymakers or course organizers. But it's not the people who build the educational goals. The educational goals are determined by the politicians or the government, the ruling party there. Examples: developing the skills of using English language as a second language. So that's a goal. Then we have general objectives. These are abstracted from broad goals. A number of general objectives can be built under a broad goal. So examples: comprehension of terminology, applications, writing correct English, using mother tongue in writing, valuing local products, etc. And specific objectives. Specific objectives can be built under general objective. So there can be several specific objectives under one general objective. In other words, a general objective can be broken down into a few small specific objectives. Once you achieve all these specific objectives, you have automatically achieved the general objective. They indicate the behavioral change in an individual or learning outcome, right? So we say the most basic definition for education is change of behavior. Change of behavior. I think I have told you this earlier also. Now, if you go to a classroom with no knowledge about, let's say, making some kind of curry, right? You go to the cookery class with no knowledge of how to cook dal, and in the class you learn it, and outcome is that you come out of the class with good knowledge of preparing a dal curry. So that's the change of behavior, right? Your behavior before the class is that you cook dal, but nobody can eat, right? But your behavior at the end of the class is that you can prepare a dal curry that can be tasted by anybody, right? So that's the change of behavior. Because of that, we say education is change of behavior, right? Not because of our dal curry, but there's always a change of behavior in the people once they have learned something. Like it's like good habits. You don't know about a good habit at the beginning of the lesson, but at the end of the lesson, you know that it's always safe and clean and healthy to wash your hands before and after meals. So the child who didn't wash the hands before meals, before the lesson, may start washing the hands before meals after the lesson. Right. So writing these in the behavioral form is very important. We have general objective using mother tongue in writing. You can break it into a few specific objectives like write sentences correctly, matching verb with the subject, use punctuations correctly, and write words with correct letters. Right. Okay, so we have competencies, a definition for competencies or a description about competencies. The term competency was originally used in the context of vocational training, referring to the ability to perform a particular task. The ability to perform a particular task. In recent decades, the term competency was widely used in the general education system. The general meaning of the term competency is able to act efficiently in a certain context. It is not limited to the knowledge, but it indicates the ability to use the knowledge, right? So see that within the competency, knowledge is involved. And the ability to use that knowledge is also included. According to who is this, Trevano, the competency means that enabling individual to apply, to use, and to integrate the knowledge acquired in complex, diverse, and unpredictable situations. So it's always based on knowledge, right? The base is knowledge, but competency goes beyond knowledge. There are other abilities, how to use that knowledge. According to his definition, the meaning of competency is the feasibility which based on the knowledge, but possible to be act in an efficient manner in various situations that is not limited to the knowledge. Right. At the Council of Europe Symposium, J. Coolhan, 1996, has suggested the meaning of competency as a common feasibility which based on the knowledge developed by the involving practical activities, experiences, values, and dispositions. So that shows to us that the competency include knowledge, right? And practical activities, that means abilities, skills, then experience. So then to gather experience, you have to practice this practical activity. Do the activity several times, not several, many times, right? And some values come in the affective domain and dispositions. According to that, competency is a perfect concept. This term fulfills the knowledge, including cognitive abilities by a student on learning. Skills based on psychomotor skills, affective traits, including attitudes. So all these things are included, right? Right. Before we talk about key competencies, okay, let's read these two paragraphs also, key competencies. Competency-based education is an important topic in the field of education. The curriculum, evaluation with learning teaching process of many schools in the world have organized on the basis of competencies. At first, competencies importantly regarded in education should be identified. The key competencies are the feasibilities needed to the life and lifelong learning. Among the key competencies identified by several school programs are given below, right? Let's look at them later. But I have a question again, right? So we know that some knowledge is included in the competency. Some skill is also important, included in the competency, right? Affective domains like attitudes are also included in competencies, right? So then What's the difference between mere knowledge, skill, or competency? Let's say now a competency is ability to write something. Let's say writing formal letters. That's a competency, right? Or then we can term it as ability to write formal letters or skill of writing formal letters, right? Let's take another practical example. A competency in sports, a competency in swimming, right? Competency in swimming, skill of swimming. What's the difference? Competency skill. Are they, I mean, similar or different? What's the difference between ability to write and the competency of writing? Let's go back to that. The child is able to write a formal letter. The child has the competency of writing formal letters. What's the difference? What do you think the difference is? Anybody who would like to give an answer? Our learner is able to write a formal letter. Our learner has the competency of writing formal letters. What's the difference? Does it make any sense to you? Like, do they give two different meanings or the same meaning?
So is that by I mean having a skill, ability to write a letter is a skill. I mean, it's a skill that is developed.
Yeah.
And by developing, that skill further, competency can be achieved. Is that so?
That is correct. Yes, that's the explanation, right? Can we have something like an example? For example, writing a formal letter. So the child writes a formal letter to the principal asking for permission to conduct a debate in the school with some other school, right? What difference do we see in the skill of writing that formal letter and the competency of writing that formal letters? So if two formal letters are there with the skill and competency, what differences do we see? What differences do you expect to see in the child who has like mastered the competency of writing formal letters than the child who just has the skill of writing formal letters?
At the beginning of at the beginning of a skill development, it will be like a basic, the language used and the way of presentation, or the way of presenting it. It may be a bit basic. When that skill is developed, if it is developed further and achieved in competency, then that will have some advancement in that skill. The language that the letter has will be more advanced, and like that sort of thing. Is that
Yeah,
expected?
exactly. Yes, that's what we mean. Right. Yes. So when they have the skill, okay, yes, they will follow the format. They know the format, so they will follow the format, and they know what should be written, what meaning should be conveyed, what idea should be expressed, so that all those things will be there in the skillful letter, right? Okay, so manageable. Still the task will be performed, right? But as it is competence, that the required language phrases will be there, right? There are required language phrases we use in a formal letter, right? And that the expected politeness will be there, right? We expect a particular politeness in the lesson, right? So that's where the attitudes come, right? They know that understanding is there, that we have to be polite, right? And the proper language that should be used by a student, by a subordinate to the higher position, principal. So the proper language, right? So all those things will be advanced, as you say. Yeah, that's the difference between skill, the mere skill or mere knowledge, and competency, right? Okay, now let's look at these key competencies given as examples. Competency based, okay, that we need. The competencies related to thinking. So these are things actually, of course, we also should have. Competencies related to thinking. Thinking is about using constructive, critical, and metacognitive processes to make sense of information. Experience and ideas. The students who are competent thinkers and problem solvers develop skills by seeking the knowledge actively. So competencies related to thinking. If you are reading something, while reading, there should be thinking ability. If you are listening to somebody, again, we have to think, like, that's why we say, don't believe whatever you hear, right? We have to put them through our thinking process, and before acceptance, we have to verify, get the facts verified. Competencies related to language, symbols, and quotation. So language abilities. Students who have this competency are able to use and interpret the words, symbols, numbers, movement, images, metaphors in a range of contexts. So that means they have good language abilities, right? Competencies related to self-management. This competence is associated with self-motivation, the feasibility of reaching to the life objectives independently with attitudes on can do, can learn, etc. Right? So having some self-confidence, that is an important competency. Otherwise, the students, learners become very like lethargic. They think we can't do, right? So many failures are there in our society because of that. Competencies related to interact with others, social skills. The students who have this competency are able to act in different roles in different occasions. They are aware of how their words and actions affect others, right? So if you just go back to the history, just 1 or 2 years back, right? We noticed not 2 years, just a year back, right? We noticed what happens, long queues, the fuel queues, and then the gas queues, etc. Right? People are fighting, always fighting with the others, right? So that social skill was not developed, right? We can't live with the others. We have become very aggressive. We can't tolerate the behavior of the others. We can't tolerate the words of the others. So that's not a competent society, right? A society that can live with others harmoniously, peacefully. So that competency should be there. Competency related to participation and contribution. The students who have this competency are capable of contributing as a group member in an appropriate, it should be manner, in an appropriate manner to the occasion. They provide opportunities to other members to make their contribution, right? So if you think about your class in the school, right, you will see that there are some students who always dominate. When we give a group task, there are some students who always dominate. They take the task into their hand and all the other students have to follow their instruction, and the action is completed or the performance is done according to their wish, what they believe. And eventually it can be completely something against what the teacher expected. Everything has gone wrong because these people, they don't listen to the others. They take over at the very first and they start dominating. On the other hand, there are some other students who just become like lurkers. They are just members of the group, that is all. they don't do anything, right? They just hang in with the group, don't perform any task, depend a lot on the other people's activities. So either party is bad, right? We have abilities and we should be able to contribute based on our abilities. The behavioral changes needed to reach the above key competencies can be identified through each subject. Teaching and evaluation can be organized by detailing these competencies as specific objectives, right? So they expect us to organize competencies as specific objectives, but our discussion about competencies revealed to us that they can be broken into a series of small specific objectives. An evaluation which is done to know that whether students have reached to a competency should be a criterion one. It should be decided that whether every student has reached to the expected competency level based on the relevant criteria. The traditional norm referenced evaluation method, which is used to separate clever and unclever or weaker students, or ranking according to the cleverness, is not appropriate for this. The criteria referenced evaluation approach described in the first part of this handbook is an appropriate method for evaluating competencies. So we discussed about these approaches, and I added the ipsative referenced approach, where we compare our abilities, our past abilities with the present abilities, and the criterion referenced with a set of predetermined criteria we make the measurement. And the norm reference, as we say, by comparing the students, right? So here for the competencies, the best is the criterion reference approach, but at the same time, if you want to see level by level development, the best is the ipsative referenced approach, right? I will tell you, a competency is a combination of knowledge, skills, good attitudes, and this combination, once it practiced for a long time, become a competency. Once it becomes a competency, it is never lost. That ability is complete. I mean, they are in yourself for throughout your life, right? For example, this is my final question for today, right? Just imagine that you can ride bicycles. You can ride a bicycle. For some reason, you don't ride bicycle for 5 years. And after 5 years, if you happen to ride a bicycle again, do you have that ability of riding bicycles or not? Can't you do it, or can you do it? Hello, what do you think?
We do have the ability, but like sometimes it might take like a little bit of time to get the practice again.
Yeah, okay, yes, agreed. Now, for example, something like this, a mathematical formula, right? You learn the mathematical formula and you do certain calculations. You can make sums using that, right? And after about 5 or 6 years, again, all of a sudden that formula is given to you and somebody asks you to solve a problem. Now, what about this? Will you able to do it at once? What's your idea about that? Can we still easily apply that mathematical formula and solve the problem?
Again, it depends. So maybe like we need a little bit of revision on it. Otherwise, we cannot remember because we have not been used it for some period of time.
Yes, of course, you need some revision, right? But I don't think for riding a bicycle, you need any revision. Is there anybody who will teach you again how to hold the handle and how to climb onto the bicycle and how to like pedal it around? I don't think so, right? But for that calculation, after 5 years, the formula, right? You might need, I mean, I think very, very often what happens is we have to refer to our books and see how we did it earlier. So that's the difference between knowledge, skills, and competencies, right? Once something has become a competency, it is never lost, right? When you want to do it again, that the skill will automatically come out, right? You will be a little unstable for a few seconds for a certain time, but after that, that will be okay, right? But of course, for the mere knowledge, you need some revision. That's the difference between skills, knowledge, and abilities and competencies, right? We put all those four things together and make it a competency. Once a competency is there, right, it is never lost, right? Whenever you need it, it will come out, right? So that's why we focus more on competency and competency levels these days, right? Competency, it's very difficult to achieve overnight. So because of that, we have broken it down to small steps. Like the same example, I will take the same example, riding a bicycle, right? You can't learn to ride a bicycle in a day or two, right? There are so many different levels of it. Like first, you should understand certain things about the bicycle. By looking at it, you see that now you have to hold the handle like this, then you have to pedal it round, and if you want to stay in balance, you need to pedal it continuously. So there are some basic knowledge. You understand identify the parts of the bicycle. There's the handle, the brakes, the brake levers, pedals, seat, right? Wheels, those things, and that's the knowledge associated, right? Then the first thing is to holding the bicycle correctly, right? Then the second level will be climbing to it, right? And the third level will be riding it for some distance away we start, right? So if you can manage about 10 meters, that can be the first level of the competency, right? If you can manage it bicycle for about 50 meters, right, and still wavy, right, that's the second level, right? The third one is now, okay, you can get onto it, ride it, and apply brake and properly stop it, the next level of development, right? Now then, if you can ride the bicycle along the road for a certain distance, right, that's the next development, right? Now after that, it will be that you can ride the bicycle to the expected destination by sharing the road with the others and safely reach your destination safely. That's a very good level of competency, right? That may be sometimes that may be the competency we expect, right? But there can be higher competency levels than that also, right? You can take part in a bicycle race, right? That's another competency. That's a level. That's another competency level, right? Okay, so you can do some like circuses activities, right, using the bicycle. Another developed level. So there can be so many different levels of competency and competency levels, right? So we don't expect the highest level of competency from everybody, because everybody cannot go up to that level, right? If you take dancing, now every one of us can dance. That's our ability, right? The competency will be learning a certain style of dancing and performing that dance on the stage, right? So that's a good that's a competency, right? And a higher developed competency level will be creating a dance, a new type of dance. Now everybody cannot go up to that level. So our expectation from a general person, the competency will be like learning a dance and performing it on the stage. So that's how the levels come, right? First, moving your hand and feet according to the beat of the drum, right? In combination of drum beats and combination of movements, putting them together and identifying it as a dance, right? So there are different levels of competencies. So that's the difference between levels and full competency. The survival level can be the, like, not the survival level. The average day-to-day expectation is the competency. The practical life situation. Right. So we have discussed about goals, aims, objectives. Objectives also we divided into two as general objectives and specific objectives. Then again, instructional and behavioral objectives. We wrote some behavioral objectives as examples. Then we discussed about skills, abilities, competency, and competency levels. So those were the basics of our discussion today, right? And in our next lesson, I would like to go deep into writing specific objectives, how to write objectives and SMART objectives, then the 3 domains, how to write objectives in the 3 domains, the levels of 3 domains, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains, different levels of them, and writing objectives in them. Most probably our next lesson will be tomorrow. So until such time, thank you very much for joining. That's all for today. Have a good day. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome all.